hands in the air! Everyone free!
Dead Connection quietly hit the arcades in 1992. I say quietly because the game had the misfortune to be buried under a mountain of notable arcade machines that year, including X-Men, Virtua Racing and Mortal Kombat, to name just a few. But the 90s loss is the 2020s gain, as Dead Connection becomes yet another forgotten arcade gem to join the ever-expanding Arcade Archives collection, courtesy of Hamster Corporation. Across 8 varied and surprisingly destructible levels, it's your job as one or two of 4 FBI agents, the menacingly named James, Philip, Eddie and Gary, to take down a set number of baddie gangsters. Each round culminates with a heftier boss character, which reminds me of Clint Eastwood trying to kill the fat bloke in action comedy City Heat with Burt Reynolds. Ask your dad. Across each level you'll pick up new temporary pistols, a shotgun or a machine gun, spraying bullets with impressive accuracy while making your way up and down ladders and staircases, diving out of the way when bullets and even cars come flying at you, amongst other obstacles. It's every bit as simple and enjoyable as it appears, and once again Hamster have done a great job in adding a huge variety of gameplay and screen options, so you can tailor the experience to your screen and mood. It might sound promising to have 2 classic shooters bundled into the one package, but for the uninitiated, Layer Section and Galactic Attack are in fact exactly the same game, with the regional titles providing the one and only difference. But once you get over any disappointment, what we have here is a very solid game. There must have been a lot of strokey beard meetings in the late 80s and 90s amongst publishers and developers discussing how they could make their shooters stand out from the roughly 45 billion that were released every month at the time. Layer Section and Galactic Attack keep things quite traditional for the most part, except your weapons are divided into standard forward barrage and lock-on varieties, with only the latter able to target ground units or those that emerge with impressive sprite scaling from any number of varied structures throughout the game. You need to keep your eye on who's having a go at you and mix your attacks up accordingly. Some bosses will only take hits with one weapon type or the other at various stages, which lends a small amount of welcome variety. It's the graphics and the sense of place that really sell this project, over and above many of the game's flat backdrop contemporaries. The pixel art is rich with detail, and a lot of the bases, ships and environments in general feature dynamic, evolving animation that really sells the depth and the scale. If you're a shooter fan that hasn't tried this yet, be sure to pull back your canopy and take a look next time you land. Zero Gunner 2 was a surprisingly successful take on gameplay in 360 degrees where you only have one single arcade joystick. The control method still works well in this home version, by holding down a button and then throwing the arse of your helicopter out one way or the other, if that makes sense. Within a few minutes it's perfectly intuitive and it's easy to keep shooting while you manoeuvre. Given its early 2000s heritage, the levels are a bit more dynamic than you might have come to expect from your standard scrolling shooter, with a nice sense of place, scale and depth. Zero Gunner 2 doesn't always have the detail or the charm that many of the pixel art games in this list do, but the full use of the screen is appreciated and the action is always easy to read. The 3-player helicopters each have their own weapon set, and playing with them made me dewy-eyed with the memories of the 16-bit Strike series. Overall, Zero Gunner 2 moves at a really nice pace, with some player-friendly options and a challenge that's unlikely to frustrate and pull your pants down too early. Gunforce and its sequel are nowhere near as well known as many of the run-and-gun heavy hitters of the 80s and 90s, and they've been very difficult to find over the years in any official capacity. But thanks to the recent IREM Collection Volume 2 for PC and consoles, we can now see what we've been missing. The original game takes the Contra template and builds on it with a number of different vehicles and contraptions to ride, many with their own weapons for extra explosive damage. The feel of the movement and the feedback of the gunplay stands up really well today. And then the sequel takes everything and jams a grenade right up its arse. You'd be forgiven for thinking that Gunforce 2 borrows more than a few ideas from Metal Slug, but it is in fact the IREM game that predates the first title in SNK's series by 2 years in the arcades. Gunforce 2 is the purest of arcade games. It's wildly over the top with a mass of bullets, explosions and bodies every few seconds, on top of an inexplicable pile of hapless cheerleaders that need saving. It's brilliant fun, even with the occasional slowdown still baked into the code. It's the kind of game you dig out endlessly when you don't want to think, you just want to shoot. The Vasara collection has you riding the skies on a kind of retro future hoverbike like Flash Gordon. Ask your dad. This is a generous package containing 3 games, the 2 original pixel art titles and a new timeless edition, and it's the latter I'm showing you here. For once in a shooter, it makes fantastic use of the modern large TV screens and monitors that many of us are playing on these days. Every single bike ship thing plays differently with the traditional trade-offs between speed and power, and it's good fun to experiment with each of them, spewing out faster, harder and more colourful death as you collect the power-ups. There's even a strong unlockable character as a reward for completing one of the original games in the package. But be warned, this modern version of the game is a one and done. You can't add any credits to continue and there are no difficulty settings. The 2 original games will also spank you ragged on the normal difficulty setting upwards, but here you can tone things down a bit if you want to, along with adding extra credits, bombs, and you can continue to your heart's content. Overall, the Vasara collection offers a great variety of ways to play. Making sure you kill each individual mini-boss general in every level, timing your specials to destroy incoming projectiles, and mixing up your craft's thunderous forward fire with close quarters melee weapons and bombs is a very satisfying, addictive dance in any of the 3 games. Elevator Action Returns is like a 2D tribute to the Die Hard series, up and down buildings, construction sites and airports, in and out of lifts, and killing everyone in a nicely bloody fashion. John McClane probably played this game 5 times through every morning before starting a shift. You can actually choose between 3 different characters here, each with their own starting weapon, speed and resilience, and it's basically your job to acquire certain items found behind red doors as you make your way from point A to point B. Along the way you'll find temporary bonus weapons, including machine guns, rocket launchers and grenades, and they're all as enjoyable to use as they are plentiful. The animation is excellent for every character, although admittedly Jad the Taff here does walk like he's shat himself. The feedback from his default Desert Eagle, and all the other weapons in the game for that matter, is endlessly enjoyable to witness though. As with all arcade shooters, this is a pretty short game, but the difficulty is pitched really well, even for jaded old farts like me with failing reaction times. I'm always happy to start another run from time to time, mixing up the characters, weapons and overall approach to the levels. The Cotton series has been reliably dishing out the mental and acute in equal measure for well over 3 decades now, and the franchise is still getting some great games and remakes to this day. In Cotton Boomerang you choose a team of 3 crack broom operatives to go up against the armies of the evil witch Wool, who's nicked all of your favourite sweets. The usual. This is a lot of colourful fun. Each character has a weapon specialism and you can swap between your chosen 3 on the fly for a limited number of times, in addition to powering everyone up through a number of stages with crystals found through the levels. If all 3 of your characters get hit and die, you can rejig your team entirely and continue, credits permitting. You can also grab and hold certain enemies, using them as a shield or projectile, and everyone fires a bloody great spectral dragon if you hold down the fire button, doing away with most smaller enemies and incoming fire. The pixel art looks great in Cotton Boomerang. Every stage offers something different and the bosses are enjoyable to tackle. If you've never tried the series before, this is a pretty good jumping on point. Some of my viewers will be old enough to remember the games Combat and Tank Plus for the Atari 2600, released way back when Queen Victoria was still wearing colours. They were great fun for their day, but since then, tank shooters have become comparatively rare, typically giving way to the faster thrills that jets and spaceships provide. In a nice change of pace, Gunforce is a multi-directional shooter that has you taking control of a futuristic tank, one which is a lot nimbler than its early 80s cousins as you scroll in all directions through 7 stages. You always fire forward with whatever weapon you happen to be carrying, in addition to turning your gun turret 360 degrees left or right using 2 different buttons. I map these movements to the triggers on a gamepad and the whole thing quickly becomes perfectly intuitive. It's your turret that will deal the most damage, and you can swap between a variety of weapons as you trundle over different colour power-ups across the levels. As with most shooters, there's no right or wrong answer as to the type of projectile you're using, it's purely player preference and how you like to attack. Even by traditional shooter standards, Gunforce soon becomes bastard hard and would probably have cost millions to complete in the arcades. While there are still no difficulty settings in this S Tribute version, you can cheat somewhat and play with infinite credits, allowing the more casual gamers a glimpse of what was impossible to achieve over a quarter of a century ago. I won't tell. Riot feels like a cross between Wild Guns and the classic viciously vibrating Uzi light gun game Operation Wolf, with enemies springing up all around you in the background and foreground and even hanging upside down from the top of the screen. The story is one of corruption, aliens and bollocks, as was mandatory for just about every arcade game of the era, although I can't think of another game where you fight a giraffe-necked panther and beat up a gorilla wearing a gilet. As 1 or 2 players, and it works especially well with 2 here, the controls aren't bad at all. Using the left stick to move your character, duck behind cover and sweep the crosshairs, then one button shoots into the background and another hits those popping up closest to you. The only downside is the speed at which your crosshairs move across the screen, which could have been a bit quicker, although rolling around will inject a quick burst of pace for your targeting, and this becomes an important tactic. 2 players can cover ground more quickly, of course, and again, I'd recommend that you enlist a friend to get the most out of the experience. Diving into cover and smashing baddies off the ledges and out of windows always feels good, especially with one of the hefty weapon power-ups. Indeed, the whole game is just so enjoyably ridiculous, with a bit more of a tactical edge than you might expect. It's worth a look if you're looking for a shooter that's more than just hammering up a screen with the fire button held down. You can't really have a shooter conversation and not include Capcom. Various cabinets from their 1940s series are still lurking in the oldest, mustiest pubs and chip shops across the land, and are all just as perfectly playable today, if somewhat sticky with spilt beer and cooking fat. By the time 2001 rolled around, Capcom's attention had largely turned to the domestic market and their newer money spinners like the Resident Evil series, in preparation for becoming the giant fountain of eternal cash they are today. But they still found time to publish the odd arcade shooter, and Progear, by developer Cave, is one of the better ones to release in those arcade twilight years. Progear goes all in on the fantastic, varied pixel art and bullets. Lots of bullets. It can seem overwhelming quite quickly, but given time, the game settles into a pattern that always gives the player a chance to succeed. The levels and bosses feature a lot of detail and character, and you can choose between 2 fighters and 3 different gunners with whom to share your cockpit, with each combination providing very different strengths and patterns of attack. There may only be 5 levels, but a kind of new game plus is possible if you meet certain criteria in a run through, and with the game only costing £1.69 or $2 or euros as part of the Capcom Arcade Stadium, this is a bargain for some high caliber catharsis. I'd love to hear what your favourite shooters are, and please feel free to tell us in the comments below. If it's not too much trouble, drop me a like and ding your notification what's it so you don't miss any new videos. I'll be back very soon with a lot more games, new and old. Cheers for now.